you go to college? Oh, because for a better future, whatever that means. So you're gonna shell out tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours. Go through all that process because you think there might be something better at the end? Yeah. Does your cat do that? Does your dog do that? Does any animal sacrifice what presently is for what could be? To do that is what makes you strictly human. We have an idea of sacrifice, to give up something that we presently are for what we could become someday, even if we can't even envision it yet. That's the nature of all religions. And all religions are reflections of humanity. That's what it is. It's a psychological process of trying to understand the world around you and where you fit into it. Because if you don't face what's down there, it's going to continuously happen. Like, unless we bring the unconscious up into the consciousness, you're going to do what you've always done. And then you're going to call it faith. Can't help it. I'm a Virgo. The way that you make yourself operate in the world is not to try to change the whole world. What you do is you change yourself. It's the height of narcissism to tell the rest of the world, you need to change to make me comfortable. You need to change this language. You need to change that word. You need to change that idea. And you need to institute this policy. And you see it all the time, though. People who are out in the streets protesting, have placards and banners, and they're chanting, they're marching. None of them at work, of course, by the way. And I bet, if I got their addresses and went to their houses while they're out at the protest, telling the whole world how to change, I would bet overwhelmingly most of them, their beds aren't made. I'm gonna bet that their rooms are a mess. And yet they're out there telling the rest of the world how to change, while their own lives are a mess. While their own environment, the things that they have direct control over, are a mess. Begin with that first part, figure out what's real. Secondly, who am I? What are the things that have shaped me? What is it I can possibly shape myself into? And then finally looking at it, recognizing that there are serpents in the world, that they're in the garden. And so what can I do now to find a way to operate in a world where those things exist, to find a meaningful way to do it? It's beyond our ability to know what it is. If you can name like 10 things that can go wrong, trust yourself. There's probably like 30 or 40 things that can go wrong. And it isn't always the things that you can imagine that can go wrong. It's going to be the stuff that you can't even imagine that it can go wrong. And it is that stuff that's beneath the surface. You mentioned the ocean. I'm going to point this out. Sometimes you'll see this, that the ocean is used as a metaphor for your mind, for consciousness. The stuff that's above the ocean that you can see, it's nice, it's peaceful, it's calm, looks like there's order to it. The sun is up there, it's shiny, it's beautiful. But then what's underneath there is stuff that, well, most of us don't even know. Now, if you ever do, go into the water and look around, you can see all the fish, the little baby sharks, the stingrays. There's a lot of stuff down there. And how much of it can hurt you? Not all of it. Stingrays can certainly mess you up. Have you ever been stung by a stingray before? What are you supposed to do? Anybody know if a stingray stings your friend's foot, what are you supposed to do? Pee on it. Now, why are you supposed to pee on it? There's a really good reason to do it. Does it take away the pain of the sting or anything? No, it doesn't do anything for the stingray. It's useless for that, but it's funny. Just tell your friend that you pissed on their foot for no reason once they find out. Yeah, you're supposed to put it in warm water. They say that the stuff in the urine will neutralize it. That's all complete. It's not true, but it'll be funny. There's a bunch of stuff down here that you can't see, and it's the stuff that you can't see that's worrying. And the reason you can't see it is because you've never gone down to investigate it. You can think of this as a metaphor for your mind. The stuff that's up here looks all bright and sunny, wonderful, but the stuff that's down here is the really dangerous stuff. Because the stuff that really animates and motivates your life is not the stuff that's in your consciousness. It's in the stuff that's in your unconscious. This is the childhood trauma, the biases, the prejudices, the things that you've picked up along the way without really even realizing that you're picking up these ideas. The values that you have, we don't really even know why we have those values. Those are the things that really animate you. These are the things that we give credit to. And there are some things there, of course, but this is the stuff that really drives you. And so how is it that you can, I guess, quiet your mind or make your mind healthy to better understand yourself and to understand why you do the things that you do, which of course helps you to make sense of the world? Well, the way that you do it is you get down into the unconscious. You have to dip your head down and face what's down there. Because if you don't face what's down there, it's going to continuously happen. Like, unless we bring the unconscious up into the consciousness, you're going to do what you've always done. And then you're going to call it faith. Can't help it. I'm a Virgo. The only things that you can control are the things that you are aware of. As he's saying here, the things that we're not aware of are the things that own us. I was talking last period about this idea that, how about this? If you looked at this past semester in this class, and if I were to ask you, what did you learn? And I imagine most of us would say, nothing. He didn't make us work, so we didn't. Just talk to friends and did this and did that. So a better question would be, what could you have learned? And I bet the answer for the most part is going to be, I don't know. Of course not. Because we don't know what we don't know. Anybody remember how we started this semester? What articles we read? Yeah, simulated universe. Why does that matter? Because the question about the simulated universe is a question it's not just some novel question, are we living inside of a computer program? Fine, whatever. The question there is, what's real and what's not real? How do you know what's real? How do you know what you're experiencing is true? Does it matter if what you're experiencing is true? And most of us will say, I want something real, and we get pissed off when we're given something that's not true. And so if I ask that question, how do you know what's true and what's real and what's not real? And it isn't enough just to say, I just know. How would you possibly know unless you've ever learned how to investigate that stuff? So first things first, to figure out what's the nature of reality? What's real? How do I know what's real? It's called epistemology. After that, we looked at the stuff on trauma. Why are you the way that you are? What? Childhood trauma. We looked at why it's important to undergo that trauma. And then we looked at how it is that you overcome that. We looked at how it is that a human being, yourself being a human being included, is shaped. So how is it that we become what we become? It's not even just ourselves, of course. It's understanding why other people are the way that they are. Like, for example, people talk to me if I ever have parent conferences. It's really rare. I don't need to meet your parents. I've already met them. I've met you. You're a product of that. You're a product of your environment. I don't need to know where you came from. I can figure it out just by having a couple-minute conversation with you, by looking at the work that you turn in for whatever it is. You can figure those things out about people if you know what to look for. The way that you know how to look for those things is to examine yourself and start to find them inside of yourself. Broaden your horizons with it. So the first thing we look at is how do we know what's real? What is the nature of reality? Secondly, what's my place in it? How did I become what I am? Because once you recognize that you become what you become through certain processes, now the question becomes, of course, at the end of it, how do you want to be? What do you want to become? What do you want your character to be? How do you want to operate in the world? What's the thing that you want to build up, if anything at all? Or do you want to stay the product of what you are right now? And it's basically saying there's a choice to be made. Do you want to become something greater than what you presently are? Because it's possible. Of course it's possible. Or do we settle for what we presently are? And I teach this stuff, by the way, with an absolutely broken heart, although lots of jokes, because I know 90% of the people just accept what we presently are because we think it's easier. It's less work at the moment, but it isn't easier. As you grow older, as you grow up, looking back on what you could have been, all of a sudden things clicking when you're older, things that should have clicked when, much, much earlier, if we had taken the time to examine it. But we weren't aware of it because we didn't make ourselves aware, but we intentionally avoided it. And then you realize what you could have created and built yourself up to become. And it's not a mystery. It isn't like these are some weird keys. And understand that when I bring you these things, it isn't me bringing them to you. It's some of the greatest minds and some of the greatest thinkers who have ever lived, the complete experts in these fields. Even the articles and things that we read, these are all by people who know a lot. These are experts on it who are telling you, you want to have a better, more fulfilling life. You want to be happier. You want to be more joyful. You want to create a better life for your future family. Here's how you do it. And so often we say, what? What was that? Oh, okay. So when I see these posts on Instagram, I wish we learned something useful back in school. I learned about metaphors and similes, which by the way are incredibly important for a very specific reason. But I didn't learn about taxes or how to do rental agreements. It's like you did. You just weren't paying attention. Did you learn how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide? If you can do those 4 things, then you can do taxes. That's all the taxes take. Basic arithmetic. Yeah, but how do you do it? Read the directions. No, but I don't know how to do it though. Oh, if only there was a class that you could have taken whose whole focus was on close reading and understanding texts. If only. I'm going to start that class. I'm going to call it English Language Arts, and we're going to read texts and understand them. But if you paid attention in your ELA class, then you learned how to do that. So yeah, you already know how to do taxes, and you already know how to do rental agreements. You know how to. And those things also give you the skills to go and learn the things that you want to learn. And that's what the purpose of all of this is. To develop a skill set so that you can learn the things that you want to learn. What's the whole point of this class? It's funny that we'll go through the whole class. We'll go through 4 years of English Language Arts and not even understand why we had to do it. We'll just robotically, mechanically say, to have a better future. How? How does this help you at all? And that's a crossroads question. It really is a crossroads question. It's a question that literally gets down to what it is to be a human being. If you answer that question as, it won't help me, that's a hell of a statement to make, man. When millions and millions of people have come before you and studied it and found a reason to do it. To decide without even knowing why, I'm not going to need this. To know somehow what your life is going to be like in 15 years, 20 years, if you're going to need it. Or to come along and say, and this is the really human answer, I don't know why I'm going to need it, but I might. So let me learn it now. Let me sacrifice something right now for something that I could get better later on down the road. And that's the nature of all sacrifice. Why would you go to college? Oh, because for a better future, whatever that means. So you're going to shell out tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours. Go through all that process because you think there might be something better at the end? Yeah. Does your cat do that? Does your dog do that? Does any animal sacrifice what presently is for what could be? To do that is what makes you strictly human. We have an idea of sacrifice, to give up something that we presently are for what we could become someday, even if we can't even envision it yet. That's the nature of all religions. And all religions are reflections of humanity. That's what it is. It's a psychological process of trying to understand the world around you and where you fit into it. Whether you believe the stories or not, what's the story of Adam and Eve? Whether you believe religion or not, doesn't matter. What matters is the psychological story that's telling. And what's the story that's telling? There's a garden, a perfect place, 2 people, that's it, literally made for each other. And all they have to do is not screw up. And how many things do they have to not screw up? 1. Do not eat of a specific tree. And the tree is said to be the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Don't eat of that one tree. So these 2 characters, Adam and Eve, live in this garden, perfect harmony. There's no death. They're designed to live forever, to be eternal creatures. And now one day a serpent is walking around. Walking is the text describing, not slithering, but walking. And the serpent approaches the woman Eve and asks her, so God said you can eat of anything here, right? That's not what they were told. Close reading, close understanding. They said, no. He said we can eat of anything except for that tree. Oh, there's the first step of manipulation, of trying to trick people. Ask them, try to change the language on it. Second step, he follows it. The serpent says, did he really say that though? Are you sure he said that? Sowing little seeds of doubt in people. And she says, he said that. Then the third stage in it, which is just to outright deny it and to attribute negative motives to the speaker. Well, the reason he said it was because he knows that when you eat it, you're going to become a god like him. The problem with that sentence is that it's true, but the period came too soon. The period should have been, he'll become a god like him, knowing good from evil, and therefore learning about death, because you will die, period. That's what the sentence should have been. But he stops the sentence midway, because that's what manipulation does. It withholds information. These are skills that you pick up when you study language and when you study psychology, when you study how people interact. And then it gets even deeper. Then she says, I'm going to become a god. Because what's her immediate thought? I'm going to become powerful. That's not what it was. It was you're going to become knowledgeable of good and evil, because having done something wrong, now you're going to know the nature of evil. Because evil does exist. And that was the third lesson from this semester. We looked at psychopathy. We looked at the text in the presence of danger. We looked at a few texts about psychopathy. Why? Because there is evil in the world. That doesn't mean that the evil is everywhere and that there's a murder behind every rock. But it does mean that every murderer is hiding behind a rock. How do you recognize it? How can you possibly see it coming? If you're constantly paranoid and terrified living in the world, that's not really living. But how is it that you can therefore live more comfortably in the world? To be confident that you can recognize the signs of those things so that you can live effectively in the world. So that you can recognize the signs of manipulation. To recognize the signs of danger. To recognize when something's going off in you that's telling you it's just not right, to pay attention to it. Adam and Eve do none of that. She eats the fruit, and then she realizes she's messed up, and what does she immediately do? Gives it to Adam. Hey, try this. And he's dumb, so he's like, okay. He tries it. And what's the first thing they recognize once they eat it? Their eyes are open, they go, oh no, we have no clothes on, we're naked. Why does that matter? Because it suggests vulnerability. What's the vulnerability that they've now realized? It's mortality. Once that's happened, they now are going to die. And what's going to kill them now? It's the things that make them vulnerable. What are the things that are going to take you out in life? The things to which you're vulnerable. What things are you vulnerable to? If I were to ask you that, it would be difficult for you to come up with a list. Because the things that you're really vulnerable to are the things that you're not aware of. You don't see them coming. All of a sudden, it's like when you see people fighting in the street. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. Even if you're the better fighter, it doesn't mean that things are going to go your way. You're out there fighting with somebody, and I don't know, somebody left 2 weeks earlier, someone left a little Hot Wheels in the middle of the street. And you're fighting with someone, and then you slip and fall on the Hot Wheel, smack, hit your head, and you die. The end. Or you're fighting with one person and you never see his friend coming in from the side and hitting you, and then you drop. You have to be aware of so many things, and it isn't going to be who's the best or anything like that. It's going to be whoever has the fewest things that they don't see coming at them. Because those are the dangers in life. The things that are going to affect you in life are going to be the things that hit you as you're walking down the street on some idle Tuesday. Not literally, but just things that you never saw coming. You're going to go to the doctor. And just because you're feeling a little bit lethargic, or you're going to the doctor just for an annual checkup, the doctor's going to call you in for the follow-up, and he's going to say, bad news, it's cancer. Huh? How? Wait, what? I'm only 24. I mentioned that because it happened to a few friends of mine. One specifically I'm thinking of at 24. How's that possible? I never saw it coming. Could you have? Yeah, probably. Lifestyle things. I think that if I ever get hit with cancer, I'm going to know exactly where it came from. But to walk around and say, I had no idea. No. It's the things that are going to hit you that you're vulnerable to because you don't see them coming. Eve never saw the serpent coming. Adam never saw the serpent coming. They became vulnerable. And then what's the lesson there? First off, there's a lesson, which is even if things are perfect, we find a way to screw it up. We find a way because we want drama. We like it. It gives us something to do. And then it teaches us the things which we're vulnerable are the things that harm us. So we learned at the beginning, what's the nature of reality? Secondly, who am I? How was I made? How can I make myself into something that better situates in the world? And finally, we recognize that there's danger. There are serpents in the garden. And if you guys someday have families, that's one of the things that's going to bother you a lot. And I'm sure it bothers some of your parents. The fact that there are serpents in the garden. You can have a perfect place with lots of walls and protection, but somehow, some way, a serpent always gets in. Whether it's online, whether it's at a bus, whether it's the person sitting next to you in your chemistry class. There's always a serpent that gets into the garden. And you don't make the world safer by trying to get rid of all the serpents, because you can't. All you can do is try to get people prepared for how you deal with the serpents when you interact with them. There's a reason I talk to you guys the way that I talk to you. There's a reason I talk to you like you're human beings and not fragile little porcelain angels that might fall off of the shelf and get shattered. If that worked, it wouldn't be affected by this at all, because you have so many teachers who are already doing this, so many people in your lives who are already doing this. I talk to you as human beings because guess who you're going to encounter out in the world? Human beings. You're going to encounter ideas that you find bothersome. Bless you. You're going to encounter thoughts and comments and statements that are going to shake you. But you can't come in here and say, Scal, I heard about genocide today. You what? Stay here, Bunky. Let me go outside and kill everybody who talks about genocide. Make the world safe for you. That's not the way the world works. What I can do is give you access to ideas and hearing things here, so that when you go out into the world, it's not the first time you've heard them. You're able to recognize the serpents when you come across them. It's one of the reasons I go out of my way not to tell you what I think about anything. Some of you have asked me after class and before class what I think about certain issues. But my job here is not to tell you what I think about anything. It's to get you ready to encounter those ideas. And to recognize, of course, that the serpents are out there. Because it's the height of narcissism. I know that today we like to call everybody who we don't like a narcissist. We like to accuse everybody of gaslighting, gaslighting is usually just another word for somebody who calls you out on your own bullshit. Oh, there must be gaslighting. Yeah, they're out there. But the way that you make yourself operate in the world is not to try to change the whole world. What you do is you change yourself. There's 8 billion people in the world. It's the height of narcissism to tell the rest of the world, you need to change to make me comfortable. You need to change this language. You need to change that word. You need to change that idea. And you need to institute this policy. And you see it all the time, though. People who are out in the streets protesting, got placards and banners, and they're chanting, they're marching. None of them at work, of course, by the way. And I bet, if I got their addresses and went to their houses while they're out at the protest, telling the whole world how to change, I would bet overwhelmingly most of them, their beds aren't made. I'm going to bet that their rooms are a mess. And yet they're out there telling the rest of the world how to change, while their own lives are a mess. While their own environment, the things that they have direct control over, are a mess. And would you hire an accountant who is bankrupt? Would you hire a CEO who's never run a business? Why on God's name would we ever listen to protesters with messy rooms? So be the thing you want. If you want to be a protester who people should listen to, have your own life in order. Have your own room in order. Begin with that first part. Figure out what's real. Secondly, who am I? What are the things that have shaped me? What is it I could possibly shape myself into? And then finally looking at it, recognizing that there are serpents in the world, that they're in the garden. And so what can I do now to find a way to operate in a world where those things exist? To find a meaningful way to do it. But you have to know what they are first. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Happy Wednesday. And last talk of the year. Well, yeah, of the semester anyway. Yeah, I know, finally over, right?